What? Who are you?
I'm Miles Fordham, private investigator. Your butler just announced me.
Oh, of course. Forgive me. I was just, well, never mind. Please make yourself comfortable, Mr. Fordham.
Thank you, Mrs. McDonough. I appreciate you seeing me, Mrs. McDonough. I know you must be going through a difficult time right now.
What exactly is it you want from me, Mr. Fordham? I already spoke to the police about my husband's murder.
I just have a few questions of my own.
Oh, very well.
Are you familiar with the art of cryptography, Mrs. McDonough?
What an odd question.
It's just I noticed several books on the subject in your husband's office.
Oh, well, yes. Percival was interested in cryptography and secret messages and the like. He would sometimes leave me coded notes when we first began courting many years ago.
What kind of notes?
Oh, now, Mr. Fordham, those were private. But Percival got a thrill out of knowing I was the only one who could read them. Sometimes he would write them using a special ink that would only appear when the paper was heated. I can't remember the last time he did that, though.
Do you know anyone named Shackley?
No, I've never heard that name before. Why?
I saw your husband had a meeting scheduled with him shortly before his murder.
That can't be right. He didn't tell me about that. He always told me about his meetings.
It was written on his office calendar, clear as day.
As I said, I don't know who that person is. Why wouldn't Percival have told me about their meeting?
Why indeed?
Are you familiar with someone named Ruby?
I can't say I am. Who is it?
Just a name that's come up in my investigation.
Sounds like the name of a trollop, or perhaps a dog.
How are you feeling, Mrs. McDonough?
My husband of 42 years was shot in his office. How do you think I feel?
Tactful as always, Fordham. How do you do it?
My apologies. Perhaps that wasn't the most appropriate question. Is there anything I can do to help?
You can start by finding the monster who murdered Percival.
Have you heard of the Justice Killer?
That was the name the police mentioned when they told me about Percival's murder. It's absolutely terrifying to think that one sick person could be capable of such evil. Why is he called the Justice Killer? What justice was done by murdering my husband?
I'm afraid I can't answer that right now, Mrs. McDonough, but I intend to find out. What can you tell me about your husband?
I'll tell you the same thing I told the police, Mr. Fordham. Percival was one of the hardest working members of Parliament. He took his job extremely seriously. The recent election caused him a terrible amount of consternation, as I'm sure it did most people. He took Atwood's loss rather hard.
Did you see much of him?
I beg your pardon?
Surely someone with such an important position in government could find themselves consumed by their work. Did he spend much time at home?
He made it a point to come home and have dinner with me every night, even if he had to return to the office afterwards.
And did that happen often?
At least 3 or 4 times in a week, yes. He'd stay in his office working late into the night. As I said, he was very dedicated to his role.
Sounds to me like she's quite dedicated to hers, too.
Did your husband have any enemies?
He was a politician, Mr. Fordham. Half the city hated him.
Did he ever receive any kind of threats against his life?
None that I was ever made aware of. I have no idea who could have killed him, let alone who could have gotten into his office to do it. He hadn't told me about any meetings or appointments this week either.
Was it his custom to inform you of his work affairs?
Oh, well, I've always taken an interest in my husband's work. He'd often mention initiatives he was working on or people he was meeting, that sort of thing. Nothing sensitive or confidential, you understand. Just conversation about his day.
Can you think of any reason why your husband would have been murdered?
Not really. He was a vocal opponent of the construction of the Gascogne-Chumley Bridge, but I hardly think that would have been sufficient reason to drive someone to murder.
Why is that?
Well, it's just a bridge, isn't it? There are plenty of other ways to get to Chumley.
I meant, why was he opposed to it?
Oh, because the amount of money required to build it is exorbitant. Public funds should be used on roads and buildings that are falling apart. What's the point of having something shiny and new if everything around it is in disrepair?
Those are all the questions I have for now, Mrs. McDonough.
All right, Mr. Fordham.
If this actually works, I'll eat my hat. Well, I'll be damned.
Hello again, Mr. Fordham.
Can we talk some more, Mrs. McDonough?
I suppose so, yes.
Do you know anything about this letter?
I'm afraid I don't have my spectacles. What is it?
The coroner found it in your husband's pocket. He gave it to me because he thought it was blank. But after you told me about your husband's propensity for writing secret messages, I decided to try exposing the paper to heat. Allow me to read it to you. Dearest Mary, words cannot express the regret and sorrow I feel for how I acted last night. I swore to myself I would never harm you again after the last time, but I have failed us both. It is my deepest hope that you can forgive me and trust that I will never allow this monster out again.
I see. May I have that letter, Mr. Fordham?
I'm afraid I have to keep it for now. It's evidence.
I suppose that does make sense.
Mrs. McDonough, did Percival mistreat or abuse you?
He wasn't a bad man, Mr. Fordham. I wouldn't have married him if he was. It's just the stress of his responsibilities would sometimes oppress him. I would try and offer comfort, soothe his nerves, but there were a few instances where he lost control of his passions.
Did he ever hit you?
He did.
How many times did this happen?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe 2 or 3. You don't exactly count these things.
What a bastard. Maybe it serves him right for getting shot.
Thank you for your candor, Mrs. McDonough.
Can we please talk about something else?
Those are all the questions I have.
All right.
Fordham, how goes the investigation?
I'm making some headway.
Is that right? I certainly hope so for your sake.
Chief Snelling?
Yes, Fordham?
What information do you have on the Justice Killer?
Clearly not as much as you.
Oh, I see how this is gonna go.
Well, what do you have?
A list of 5 victims, some information on each of them, and no clear idea what connects them. Until your discovery of the lily at each scene, that was where we stood. While I doubt this discovery will do much to aid in tracking him down, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Do you know anything about Percival McDonough?
He's a member of Parliament. I believe his constituency is somewhere in central Kingsland. From the reports I've gotten, McDonough led a rather unassuming life for a politician. He is, however, the first victim who didn't live in Chumley. Either there's a link we've missed, or the killer is changing his method. Then again, since you seem so confident in your abilities to resolve this matter, I assume you'll provide an explanation.
Count on it. What do you know about the Justice Killer's previous victims?
Only what's in their files. All working men from Chumley. That's the only link.
You didn't look further into their personal lives? Maybe they had some social connection.
As I said, the detectives found nothing. You seem to think you can do better, so I'll leave it up to you.
You have to wonder how much more thorough the department's investigations would have been if the 4 men were all rich like McDonough.
So I see the department is still running like a well-oiled machine.
It is, in fact. But I'm sure Upton has kept you well informed of our activities. Incidentally, the woman accused in the Harris kidnapping is set to testify in court today.
Linda Walker's trial is today? That was fast.
Indeed. Sometimes the wheels of justice grind slowly. Sometimes they spin out of control. She'll be taking the stand within the hour. If you care to hear her for yourself, best get going soon.
Listen, about Leger's death.
I don't want to hear it, Fordham. What happened, happened. Nothing you can say is going to change my opinion on the matter.
And if I manage to find the man responsible?
The man responsible is standing before me. Even if you manage to find the culprit you let escape, it isn't going to bring Leger back from the dead.
But it will bring closure to the matter.
If that thought is what allows you to sleep at night, then so be it.
What makes him think you sleep at night?
Enjoying your new position, Snelling?
Reaping the rewards for years of hard work and dedicated service. A gratifying feeling you'll never be able to experience.
Oh, I get my gratification in other ways.
I'm sure you do, and I'd honestly rather not know about them.
I need to get back to my investigation.
Yes, time is not on your side, Fordham.
Remind me, Miles, why are we here again? Is this for your own personal satisfaction, or did you expect her to have some useful information?
Shh! Mrs. Linda Walker, you stand accused of kidnapping Charles Harris. What have you to say in your defense?
I had to see if I could speak with my son Alexander again.
Yes. According to your initial statement, you seem to believe that the Harris child is the reincarnation of your own deceased son.
All the evidence was there. I thought it had to be him.
And in regards to the execution of your plan, you secretly administered a soporific drug to your friend and the Harris family nanny, Mrs. Henrietta Davis? Is that correct?
Yes. I felt terrible about doing it, but there was no other way.
According to your journal, you used a mixture of chamomile and valerian, instructed by a Samuel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Samuel is a friend of mine. He works at the docks, and he knows all about plants. I asked him what the best combination of herbs would be to put someone in a deep sleep.
So it was your idea, and not his?
Yes, that's right. He only told me about the plants. He's quite the expert. Why, you should see his collection of Easter lilies.
Did she just say what I think she said?
Now then, let's turn our attention to the night in question.
Interesting. This Samuel person might be worth looking into, although we can't waste time searching the docks with just a first name. I'd make a note of it, just in case it becomes relevant later. All right, I've had enough of this courtroom. Let's get back out there. Time's running out. This place sure is big. I wonder if they actually make anything useful. Well, that doesn't look good. Well, that doesn't look good.
Excuse me, sir. Are you in charge here?
Unfortunately. Who are you? This area isn't open to the public.
I'm Miles Fordham, and I'm a private investigator looking into the murder of one of your workers.
A private investigator, eh? Then maybe you can help me out.
I'll do what I can, but I'll need to ask you some questions, Mr.
Mims. Sanford Mims. Go ahead, but make it snappy.
What can you tell me about Hannibal Kirkland? A former employee here?
Listen, I've got a lot on my mind right now.
I understand, but it's important to my investigation that you tell me what you know about him.
I'm sure it is, but as you can see, I've got a lot to deal with right now.
Well, he's no help. Maybe you can figure out a way to help him help us.
What happened to your iron mill?
What's it look like? The damn thing went and got blown up.
Was it in disrepair?
Of course not. All my machinery is sound, checked and serviced regularly. This is the work of those goddamn Redites. I'm sure of it.
What makes you certain the explosion was the Redites doing?
Take a look, boy. The whole mill got taken out. Even if this had been a mechanical failure, which it wasn't, the explosion would have been contained to a single part of the machine. This couldn't have been anything other than sabotage.
Have you had problems with Redites before?
They've sent anonymous letters, but this is the first time they've actually carried out one of their threats.
You're absolutely sure this was sabotage, then?
Yes. How many times have I got to tell you that? Listen, you said you were an investigator, right? So find out who did this to my machine. If you do, I'll help you out with whatever else you wanted to ask me about.
Looks like we haven't got much of a choice. He seems pretty upset about his machine.
I'll see what I can do. I'll be going now.
Be careful on your way out.
You there! What are you doing?
I'm Miles Fordham. I'm trying to find out about...
No time for that now! Get in here and shield your eyes!
I beg your pardon?
Just do it!
What's going on exactly?
Shh! Everything ready, Alex? 3, 2, 1, go! Amazing! It works! It works!
What works?
Etheric lamps! Our experiment was a success!
What exactly have we wandered into here, Miles?
May I ask you a few questions?
Of course! What would you like to know?
You worked with a man named Burley Cause, is that right?
Yes, I heard he was killed. Such a senseless tragedy. It's a shame he missed out on our demonstration. He was really interested in etheric technology.
Wasn't he concerned about losing his job to these technological advances?
He had no reason to. It's been made clear to all the workers that there will always be a place for us, even if our jobs are made obsolete. Unlike some other places, we take care of our own here at the Lamplight Depot.
How noble. But I'm pretty sure he's full of more hot air than the HMS Lenore.
Is there anything you know about Mr. Cause's personal life that might be relevant?
I know he was married, but I don't believe he had any children. Oh, and he used to talk about his love for fishing.
Could you give me his home address? Perhaps his wife will be willing to speak with me.
Yes, certainly. He lived at 820 Orchard Avenue, apartment 2A.
Thank you for the information. Do you know any details about Mr. Cause's murder?
Unfortunately, I don't. The police were here asking questions, but they didn't give me many details.
Do you know of anyone who might have wanted him dead?
Not at all. Burley was very friendly, always treated everyone around here with respect. You know, it's sad to think that for all our leaps forward, we're still really just a bunch of savages.
You mentioned something about etheric lamps?
Yes! Weren't you paying attention to our demonstration? You have just witnessed history!
What I witnessed was a blinding flash of light.
Exactly! That flash was the result of years of painstaking research and experimentation. It means that not only does ethericity exist, but it can be used as a source of illumination. If these experiments continue to be successful, as I suspect they will, we'll have etheric street lamps before the end of the decade. Imagine lamps that burn twice as bright, 4 times as long. Oh, this will change everything.
And if it's like anything else we've seen, it'll put a lot of people out of work, too.
With all these promises of technological advancement, have the Redites given you any trouble?
Oh, those tech-fearing dolts. Yes, I'm sorry to say that we've gotten threats from them. They have yet to carry any out, which is unsurprising.
How so?
Groups like that are all bluster and no backbone.
I've seen some evidence to the contrary.
Is that right? Well, we've seen little beyond threatening letters, and I intend to make sure it stays that way.
You have any of these letters I might have a look at?
Yes, I have one. I'll give it to you before you leave.
Are you familiar with the Justice Killer?
I've read about it in the newspaper. A horrible business. It makes me wish we could install more street lamps to keep this city safer at night. Someday, I hope to realize that dream. Then we'll really deserve to be called Lamplight City.
You think brighter streets will stop serial murderers?
It's well known that crime rates are lower in Lyon and Worcester, and they have many more street lamps per square mile.
I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of wealth in those areas. Has to be all about the lighting.
What is it you do here exactly?
Oh, several things. This is the main hub of the city's Department of Illumination. It's really just a grandiose way of saying that this is where all affairs related to street lamps and public lighting are taken care of. But in addition to sending out lamplighters or mechanics to repair damaged lamps, we also do research into new methods of illumination. That's what my personal specialization is. I help develop and test more efficient ways of lighting our streets. I guess you could consider me a modern-day Prometheus. Yes.
More like an everyday pretentious.
Thank you. Your cooperation is much appreciated.
Happy to help. Here's that letter you were asking about.
Now that's interesting. Whoever wrote this letter signed it with initials. They can't have been so stupid as to make themselves so easily identifiable, can they?